I would have been reblogging this on Tumblr. Nobody understands me. We're not refined. We're not minimalist. I was not a cool teenager. Let me be extremely clear with you. We're trying everything. We don't even know what we don't know. There we go. Lana is the high priestess. The drama of it all. I feel old now. Hello everybody, it's Sylvie. Welcome or welcome back to Tarot Magpie. I hope you're doing all kinds of good. I'm talking today about decks for my inner teenager. I've been thinking a lot recently about some kind of inner child adjacent work, and I have not been able to find either in my collection or outside of my collection to bring into my collection what I think would work as an inner child kind of deck for me. So I'm still mulling that over. That's still marinating. I'm still looking. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I want. But while I was thinking about this, I was like, you know what I do have decks for though? My inner teen. So that's what we're doing today. I've got a stack of decks. But first, let me set the scene. We're talking late noughties, early 2010s. The Arctic Monkeys' first few albums, the first Twilight movie, Lana Del Rey, Supremacy, Tumblr, oh my god, Tumblr. Pop songs as ringtones. Is that maybe a little bit too old? No, pop songs as ringtones that you'd Bluetooth between your mates. An inexplicable cultural obsession with like Alice in Wonderland and Mad Hatter's Tea Party, MSN messaging, Bebo. Bebo? Does anyone remember Bebo? Yeah, if I was even able to use the dial-up internet to access any of them. Having to have a phone and a separate camera and a separate MP3 player. I think in my late teens that was kind of changing, but the iPod Touch was huge. That was like a big significant addition to the tech world. You would have your separate iPod MP3 player. Oh my god. I feel old now. Teenage Sylvie. Vampire obsession. Avid reader of fantasy books and fan fiction. Crafty. Messy. My god. I was not a tidy teenager. I don't know if any teenagers are tidy teenagers, but I was seriously not a tidy teenager. And my poor mother just let me get on with it. She was like, as long as you're not causing a health hazard, that is your problem to deal with. I've always been obsessed with curating an aesthetic, so there was a lot of questionable makeup, clothing, fashion choices. I love to make a playlist. My iPod, I don't know where it is. I know I've still got it somewhere, and it's definitely not the first iPod that I had because I went through a few, but I've still somewhere got the iPod I had when I was like 20, and the playlists that are on that. That was Teenage Sylvie. I have some decks. Let's go through them. Okay, so first up is the Tarot of Vampires. Like I say, I fully had like a vampire obsession, and it wasn't Twilight that did it. It was My Chemical Romance. It was fully My Chemical Romance. It was that style of vampire. I wasn't big into Twilight. I love watching the movies now as like a bit of a throwback background kind of noise, but I was a different kind of vampire teen, more the grungy emo, nobody understands me kind of vampire teen, and this is that style of vampire, but also specifically, and I know I've talked about it before, it's for the, I haven't gone past it already, have I? No, it's the I think it's the Princess of Swords, who looks exactly like Taylor Momsen, who was an artist I really liked. The Pretty Reckless was her name, band. But like, can we just take a moment for like, God, I would have absolutely eaten this up. And I think this came out in 2011, so it was around the right time. Between the vampires, the drama of it all. There we go. There she is, the daughter of knives, not the princess. This was the dream. Yeah, slightly grungy, slightly sexy vampires, but also this kind of a little bit of like a coquettish Lolita vibe to a lot of it, which I think we have Lana Del Rey to thank. Lana Del Rey was a big cultural touchstone for me as a teenager. Yeah, so Tarot of Vampires, like, I would have eaten this up. And if I had been into tarot at the time, it came out at the right time. I think this was published in 2011, but I was not yet into tarot. But this absolutely speaks to my inner teenager. Is teenagehood not just the most dramatic point of life? I feel everything's difficult, everything's complicated. Everybody treats you simultaneously like a child and an adult, which is deeply frustrating. You've got hormones and sleep deprivation, and yeah. Love it. On a kind of similar note, I also think the Darkwood Tarot is one that I would have adored as a teenager, and like really speaks to my inner teen, because it's kind of sexy and spooky. It's edgy and mysterious and dark and sexy, but also it's not actual like horror territory, you know? It's kind of like Halloween sexy spooky is the kind of vibes that I feel like this deck has, and I, like I say, absolutely would have eaten it up as a teenager, and I think this definitely speaks to that. It's more aesthetically driven than it is representative of either a wide variety of people or a lot of kind of deep niche meanings of the tarot. Which there's nothing wrong with that. Most decks are aesthetically driven over representing a vision or an experience. And this is definitely one of them where the aesthetic is absolutely on point. I just think it's very cool. And maybe that's why I can't get rid of it. Not that I've really thought about getting rid of it, but I realistically don't use this that much. And I don't get a whole lot of like intuitive hits off the card illustrations. The guidebook is not bad, but it's not a reason to keep the deck around. But there's just something about it, and I think it's the fact that it speaks to my inner teenager. So I just shan't be letting go of it anytime soon. Okay, I'm gonna grab the Sistine Tarot purely because, like I said, Lana Del Rey. Lana Del Rey is in a few different cards in this deck. Lana Del Rey, Tumblr supremacy, and the curated aesthetic beauty of this deck just absolutely speaks to my inner teenager. There we go. Lana is the High Priestess. I love it. Oh, this Ace of Swords. Like this sword is so pretty. Like this deck is so pretty. I completely lost the train of thought that I was starting to ride. This deck doesn't feel young or childish or anything like that. Like that's not what I'm getting at with this one, but there are elements to it that definitely speak to my inner teenager. Not the collage art style itself, but the way that in particular this deck with the kind of imagery that's been used reminds me of Tumblr, which I essentially used as like a big digital kind of scrapbook in a way. I would be reposting stuff that I thought was cool or pretty or was something I wanted to emulate or aspire to. And that is kind of collagey in nature. So this fits that. And more so than any other collage deck I have because it's so pretty. And yeah, the Lana Del Rey of it all, it had to be. So the Sistine Tarot, this sadly is not available, but I'm so glad that it's in my collection. What is this? The Raven Cycle. Not the Raven Cycle. The Raven's Prophecy. And it is based on the Raven Cycle books, which I didn't actually read as a teenager. I read them when I was in my early 20s, I think. But they're young adult books. So that element of it feels very inner teen. Also, just the aesthetic of this deck is completely the vibe. And it's not specifically the artwork, although I do like the artwork. And I think I would have liked the artwork as a teenager. It's the way that it deviates so much from the Rider-Waite-Smith. Guarantee you as a teenager I would have, if I was into tarot, it would not have been the Rider-Waite-Smith. And I love how this is kind of doing its own thing and it's its own spin on the Rider-Waite-Smith. A lot of black. It's quite moody. I would probably have got a real kick out of the fact that it's inspired by a book series. I mean, I still do. Like, I am still the same person. I would have hated these orange borders though. That might have put me off, and this font. But yeah, the vibe of this deck is exactly inner teen Sylvie. And I think this is one of the decks out of this collection that I might actually try and do some kind of like inner teen, younger self type tarot work. I think this one would be absolutely perfect for that. Yeah, the Raven's Prophecy. Okay, next up, the Bonefire Tarot. I don't know exactly what it was, but I had a real thing for like tattoo style artwork. This really kind of speaks to that, calls back to that. And that's the thing that I think strikes me the most about this deck. Like, it's fun, it's colorful, like this explosion of color and different symbols I think also really fits with the many and questionable fashion choices I made in like that attempt to express myself. There was a lot of it was very maximalist in like I was trying lots of shit. I look back and I cringe, as we all do, as we should, frankly. We should look back and cringe. But it was a big experimental time, and I think this deck really matches with that kind of energy, because it's kind of just like a throw everything and see what sticks. And that's not to disparage the artwork or suggest that the artwork isn't thought through, but just the overall impression that I get of this deck is like we're trying everything. We're not leaving anything out. It's packed full of symbolism. The guidebook is really great for this. I've spoken about this all the time. I've got a guidebooks video if you want to hear my thoughts. But yeah, really speaks to that big experimentation with like expressing myself via fashion and makeup and how I present it to the world, the aesthetic of it all. And like I say, I was really big into like tattoo style artwork. I thought it was really cool. I still think it's cool. But I remember that was a thing that kind of came about when I was a teenager, was my interest in tattoo style artwork. So that's the Bonfire. And in the same vein, I'm also going to grab the Tarot of the Toiling Hands, because I actually have always been more drawn to wearing black and white than a ton of color. And I think, again, with the tattoo artwork, the black and white, I would have thought this was so cool. Again, I still think it's really cool. And I think as a teenager, I would not have admitted that I find this hard to visually read, that I find it like difficult to it actually is easier on screen, which is ironic. But when I'm looking at this in kind of real life, I just find it a little bit confusing to the eye. Like my eyes don't know where to focus. It's a visual processing thing. I've definitely said this before, but I absolutely would not have admitted that to myself as a teenager, which I just think is really funny. So for that reason as well, this is 100% like a kind of inner teen representative deck. Because yeah, the art style is absolutely on point. The black and white is really cool. And I would not have admitted that I can't read it. So that is the Tarot of the Toiling Hands. Okay, in a similar vein to that with the black and white, I've also pulled out the Wild Unknown Tarot. I have the tin pocket edition. The black and white and the splashes of color is super cool. And again, this is another one that's like very aesthetically correct for what I was into as a teenager. I don't know when this came out. I think it was a little bit, 2020. Oh, this tin edition is 2021. I'm not sure when, because this was indie and then it was mass market and then it was mass market mini. But I think this was, I want to say like 2018, 19. The aesthetic is exactly on point. I would have been reblogging this on Tumblr if I didn't actually reblog it on Tumblr, which again, I think it was a little bit later than my like prime teenage years. And of course, like every other teenager, I was desperate to fit in. This has been such a big, popular deck for tarot. I think this is maybe one of the decks that kind of pulled tarot a bit more into the mainstream. Or maybe it was just around that kind of time. But this deck, I feel like broke containment a little bit, because this is definitely one of the decks that I was aware of when I started getting into tarot. I may not have been like all the other girls, but I definitely would have got this deck because it's like, it's a little bit cool. I was not a cool teenager, let me be extremely clear with you. But like the style of this deck, especially compared to the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith, this is a little bit edgier, a little bit cooler. And I think that would have really appealed to me and appeals to the like inner teenager living somewhere inside my brain. And I'm going to finish that there with the Queen of Swords. Again, another deck that is like, it's popular and everyone loves it is the Wildwood Tarot. Full disclosure, I have not yet worked with this. It's been sitting there waiting for me to work with it. It's still in not alphabetical order, just order. It also speaks to the part of like teenage me that really wanted to learn about all the like spiritual landscape stuff. Like there's a reason I went on to study archaeology, and this is, I think it comes from near where I was. And I know that everybody who's like from America thinks the whole of England is near to itself, but you know, I don't know if the kind of connection to the land, the connection to ancient like this. This I feel like is close to where I grew up. The connection to ancient British landscape and paganism and Celts and what we think they might have lived like at 100% at my street. And again, like still is to a degree, but it was something I was really into as a teenager. The idea of using a deck to connect with like ancient British people, which is something that I'm a little bit more kind of not skeptical about. I just think that a tarot deck is not for me the way to go about learning about something as vast and frankly unknown as ancient spirituality. Like, we do not have direct records of it. We don't know so much more than we do know, and we don't even know what we don't know. It's the way with all ancient archaeology. We've really got crumbs. But as a teenager, I think I would have been so heavily aboard this particular train. And, you know, I have the deck now and I'm interested to see how I get on with it, because I was very much umming and ahhing about it for quite a while. Oh, and while we're talking like kind of study research things, the Sistine Tarot, which I picked up recently, has all the Greek mythology. I did one of my A levels was classical civilizations. So I read the Odyssey. I did a lot of art and architecture. I did like the Iliad, I think, and some ancient Roman stuff as well. So this was something I was very into. And again, the idea of a deck that is connected in some way with that and is using the figures of ancient myth to represent the cards, that really, I think, would have ticked all my boxes. So yeah, this sun card. That is the Sistine Tarot. Okay, I have two more. Penultimately, the Midnight Magic Tarot, because I mean, I think all teenagers are night owls. I think like literally your circadian rhythm shifts when you're a teenager to waking up later and going to bed later. But I've also just always found a sense of peace and comfort in the nighttime. It's kind of that revenge procrastination thing. And it's kind of just, I like the nighttime. And there's also something cozy about this deck. So it kind of is that it's nighttime, but it's not spooky, scary nighttime. It's quiet and peaceful and open. Present day me thinks the mushrooms are really cool. I don't know if I had any particular thoughts about mushrooms as a teenager. I don't recall. But yeah, specifically that sense of nighttime is what I really like. I lived in the countryside. The nearest street light was like 1.5 miles away. The nearest street light was like 1 mile away in a different village. So if ever I was walking at night for some reason, well, I say for some reason as though it's not just dark in the evenings for half the year, I would just have the light of like the stars and the moon to go by. And this really reminds me of that. And now I live in a city, so that's not a thing I get to enjoy anymore. So I do kind of miss it a little bit, but this really reminds me of that, I think. So the Midnight Magic Tarot speaks to the night owl part of me. I actually have a whole sleep routine now. Like, I go to bed at the same time and I wake up at the same time. And like, yes, it's because my partner wakes up for work and makes me a cup of coffee, but like, it's wild. Consistent sleep is a game changer, do you know? Anyhow, the last deck I want to talk about is the Mars Power, because, oh my God, look, the chaos, the kind of messiness, and like, I was a real messy, cluttered, again, it's a little bit like the Bonefire, like, we're just trying all the things. We're not refined. We're not minimalist. It's a try everything and see what works. You know, maybe I don't love some of these cards, but I like a lot of these cards. And that's kind of how it was figuring out my like personal style, I guess, and trying all sorts of different things. And then I'd like some things and not like others. And I look back and I cringe, but that's okay. So yeah, it's loud. It is not shy. It is not afraid to try things. It is reveling in the experimentation of it all, I feel, which is something that I also kind of wish I did a bit more of as a teenager outside of just like fashion and clothing. I wish I was a little bit braver or more assertive or more, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to articulate with that, but I think this deck does kind of speak to that. So that is the Mars Power Tarot. Needless to say, I have the these backs are so cool. I have the holographic edition, so it really is like it's loud. It's loud, it's shiny, it's here, and there is no There is no subtlety or minimalism or holding back from this deck. And that is everything. That is all of the decks that I'd kind of pulled out thinking about my inner teenager. And I've had a lot of fun actually revisiting like teenage Sylvie, because I'm, yeah, almost 30. So it's kind of half my life ago, which is a wild thing to consider in those terms. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. I hope you've enjoyed. It's maybe a little bit of a snapshot into what I was like. I don't know. But I've had fun. I would love to hear how other people have like thought about this. So like if you've got decks that speak distinctly to your inner child and then distinctly to your inner teenager, I would love to hear about it. I think it's a really cool concept. So yes, that is everything from me. I will let you go. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, I really hope you have enjoyed. Give me a like if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, all that good YouTube stuff. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.